Good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Today I am joined by members of the Arkansas General Assembly from both parties, I might add. I'm joined by the Attorney General, Leslie Rutledge. Members of the business community are represented here, as well as those of the faith community and church leaders. We are all here today to announce our support for Arkansas passing a much-needed hate crime law in the next meeting of the Arkansas General Assembly. While we understand there will be a vigorous legislative discussion on this legislation, we do have a draft bill that is available for reading and review and study, and this draft bill creates a sentence enhancement for targeting someone because of their religion, their race, or sex. 35 years ago, I was the United States Attorney here in Arkansas, and I prosecuted a white supremacist neo-Nazi group in the northern part of this state. They targeted individuals because they were Jewish, because they were others of different races, and because of their beliefs. They committed acts of violence and many other crimes targeting individuals because of those factors. At that time, there were no sentence enhancements, there was no hate crime law under federal or state law, and I wish at that time we had had one. It would have been helpful. And it would have been helpful not only in that prosecution, but it would also have been helpful to send the right consistent message across our state and nation that hate should not be tolerated and individuals should not be targeted for who they are. Today we have that opportunity. I applaud Senator Hendren and Representative Fred Love for their work on this, as well as all of the legislators working in a bipartisan way to come up with this proposal. I announced my support for the hate crime law last year before the Arkansas Sheriff's Association, and the urgency of this legislation is even greater today. Early this year, I was in Harrison, and I challenged the leadership of the city of Harrison to be a driving force for hate crime legislation in this state. And today we have Mayor Jerry Jackson of Harrison. We have Bob Largent and Melissa Collins, Chairman Leadership of the Chamber of Commerce. We have Scott Tennyson, President of the Arvest Bank there in Harrison. Boone County Judge Robert Hathaway, all leaders of that community, and they are here today to say Harrison wants to be on the forefront of getting this legislation passed. Thank you. Why is this important? Because Arkansas needs to join the vast majority of states who have passed similar legislation. We need to say clearly that Arkansas will not tolerate violence against anyone because of their race, their religion, or because of who they are. We are at a point in our history that we must hold to a higher degree of accountability those who target individuals because of where they were born, how they worship, or how they choose to live. And now the Attorney General.
Good morning. I'm honored to be here today with Governor Hutchinson and all of our legislative leaders in support of a much-needed and long overdue piece of legislation addressing hate crimes. I know that many Arkansans, like myself, are people of faith, people who are taught that we are all created in the image of our Creator and that we should love our neighbors as ourselves. Last couple of years, I had the opportunity to walk the streets of Charleston, South Carolina, and to stand in front of that church where Dylan Roof committed heinous acts of violence against innocent people after he had sat and prayed with them. A place where Christians' blood was spilled across the floor of the sanctuary. And a space dedicated to peace, worship, and fellowship. I was absolutely sickened by the thought of such evil occurring. And as the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. When unspeakable crimes are committed against people, like when Robert Bowers targeted the Tree of Life Synagogue, killing 11, wounding 6 others, including a law enforcement officer responding to the shooting, or when George Floyd was killed simply because he was black, or a 5-year-old Cannon Hinnett died simply because he was white. We must take action. Action is long overdue. These crimes cannot be tolerated, and we must send a clear message. Enhanced crimes of evil will result in enhanced level of justice. We must send this clear message that we will not tolerate hate. I have long been a vocal proponent to strengthen our laws to criminalize hate crimes in our state. I was at the same sheriff's conference last year that Governor Hutchinson spoke of and was asked about it. And I said unequivocally then and unequivocally now that I support hate crimes legislation in Arkansas. And again, to quote Dr. King, the time is always right to do what is right. In Arkansas, it is past time that we do what is right. And I will work with any legislators to accomplish this goal and work with any legislation to accomplish this goal. Hate crime legislation will allow our prosecutors, our judges, our juries, and most importantly, our communities to hold accountable criminals who victimize people based on their race, religion, and personal beliefs. Arkansas is only one of 3 states that has not adopted legislation addressing this issue. We can and must do better. I believe that this is a stain on our great state, and it sends the wrong message about who we are as a people. This is not a Democratic issue, although I'm proud to stand with Democrats. This is not a Republican issue, although I'm proud to stand with them. This is an Arkansas issue. This is an American issue. This is a human issue. Now is not the time for civil unrest. Now is the time for civil discourse. We, as Arkansans, must stop fighting one another eye to eye and instead start working together, living together, and loving one another heart to heart. I stand here today as the granddaughter of a generation who faced America's darkest era, as the daughter of a generation who started the fight against injustice. But most importantly, I stand here today as a mom to a beautiful daughter who deserves to live in a state and a world free of hate. I applaud the members of the General Assembly for bringing forth this legislation, and I will do everything I can to ensure it is passed and that we send a clear message to the rest of the world that we will not tolerate hate in the natural state. Thank you.
Before I put this down and forget about it, I want to let the members of the media know we do have hard copies of the draft of the legislation. It's also posted online, and I'll post that link a little bit later. Well, I just want to start by thanking the governor and the attorney general for coming out and leading the effort to make this change in Arkansas that, as you've heard, is so overdue. I also want to thank the many colleagues that I have here from the General Assembly, in particular on the Senate side. Senator Bond, I see you here, Senator Ingram over here, and I also have one of the first co-sponsors of the piece of legislation, Senator Dave Wallace. Dave called me after we announced that we were going to have this effort, and basically said, Jim, that looks like it's a pretty good fight. You need a wingman, and as a Cobra helicopter pilot from Vietnam, that's the guy I want to go have a hard fight with. So Dave, thank you so much for your support early on. And it is going to be a difficult challenge, and I also want to thank Representative Love for stepping up to lead the effort on the House, and he'll be talking about the wider range of support that we've had from members of the House. But let's not kid ourselves. We know this has been tried many times before. This will be a difficult effort, but I'm not sure there's many more important challenges that we've taken on in Arkansas than what we need to do to pass hate crimes legislation. Having spent 30 years in the military and being based in states all across this country, it was always amazing to hear the impression that people had of my home state of Arkansas, and the contrast between what the message was and what I knew the reality to be of our people here. And I will tell you that passing hate crimes legislation sends a powerful message that needs to be sent on behalf of who Arkansas is. But even more, I think, important about this is failing to pass hate crimes legislation and being one of only 3, or even worse, the only state without these basic protections that the majority of Arkansans support sends a horrible message about who Arkansas is, a message that is absolutely out of sync with who we all know Arkansas to be. It is an important task that we take. I want to tell you that this is the beginning of the legislative process. There will be negotiations and confrontations as there are in any piece of legislation, and we welcome that. But I will tell you, to get to this point has taken a lot of good faith negotiation from all the affected groups. And that was important to me, is the people who are most impacted by this legislation buy into it. It can't be something that those of us who have little impact on this say we're going to do and fix it, and not have support from those that are so impacted by this legislation. And we've gotten to that point. We've gotten to a point where we can do it and also have tremendous support from the faith community and from the business community, which is essential. So again, I know we've got a long road ahead of us. I look forward to the dialogue with our colleagues. I talked to one this morning and made great progress when they understand what the bill does and what it does not do. I am confident we'll get there. But it's going to take all of us working together, and I just appreciate the legislators who have stepped up this far to get us to this point. Representative Love.
Well, good morning. Before I get started, let me introduce some of my colleagues that have co-signed as well as joined us this morning. You'll be hearing from a couple. We have Representative Nicole Clowney, Representative Tippy McCullough, and Representative Jeff Wardlaw, who will be speaking. But we also have representatives like Jamie Scott, Representative Denise Ennett, Representative Andrew Collins, Representative Dan Douglas, Megan Godfrey, and am I missing anyone? And Marsh, yes, Marsh. I'm sorry, Marsh. And so, as you can see, we have a broad range of support in the House of Representatives for this bill. And so, I'll look forward to a spirited debate, but I also look forward to passing hate crimes legislation finally. In the preamble of the United States Constitution, you will find these words: "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity." Today we gather to discuss hate crime legislation and continue the work our forefathers laid out in the framing of our country. A more perfect union implies that progress is never complete, that it will continue, that we will continue to have to work to establish justice. Ensure domestic tranquility, as well as provide for the common defense of Arkansans. Make no mistake, hate crime legislation cannot stop the hate in people's heart. Only God can change that. However, if we have the opportunity to deter people from acting on that hate, I think it is imperative we use the means of legislation to ensure we do that. To all who are listening, in the coming weeks and months, the effort to pass hate crime legislation will be a struggle. But I am reminded of the words of a true American pioneer, Frederick Douglass, who said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." Hate crime legislation is about progress. It is about the story of America and Arkansas. To continue to form a more perfect union, to continue to form a more perfect state, so that Arkansas can deliver on her promises as a land of opportunity for all people, despite race, color, creed, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. I look forward to working with all of you so that Arkansas can join the rest of our nation in adopting hate crime legislation. May God bless you, and may God bless this great state of Arkansas. And now, it gives me pleasure to bring on Senator Joyce Elliott.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Representative Love, and thanks to the governor and everybody else who's worked so hard to get us to this point today. I am especially proud that we are here in a bipartisan effort to set forth something that needs to be righted in our state. And though several people mentioned that this will be difficult, this might be a struggle, I pray it will not be a struggle. Because why do we have to struggle to do the right thing for our state and the people in our state? But if it is a struggle, we are up to it. But I have had a long road getting here today. When I was 17 years old, and everybody in my class, a lot of young people I knew were leaving Arkansas, I understood why they were leaving Arkansas. It was tough being here. It was tough to get opportunity. But at 17, out of the blue, from somewhere, probably not from my own thinking, I determined this is my state. I'm going to put my feet down right here and make my contribution right here at 17. And then after I thought about it for a while, I thought this is a scary decision to have made, but I was able to stick with it. 30 years after that time, I found myself right here in this building, pretty much 30 years after that time, in this building, working on legislation, working on a hate crimes bill. Y'all, that was 2001. 2001. I was a lowly freshman. I came here with my expertise as an educator, but guess what committee I got on? Judiciary. So this bill was introduced in 2001 in the Senate, Senator Bill Walker. They passed the bill without any fanfare. It gets to the Judiciary Committee. Apparently, nobody else wanted to touch it, and it fell to me to shepherd this thing. I am a freshman in the Judiciary Committee. But it made sense. And this was a time I had to step up to do what I thought was right. The bill had gone well. It ran into a roadblock in the House Judiciary Committee. We could not get it passed. And the major reason we could not get it passed was because, unlike today, we had clergy who showed up to speak against the bill, unlike today. It was a difficult thing to decide that I would have the option of getting this bill passed if I would remove from the bill anything to do with sexual orientation. And as a person who has prided herself since I was 10, that everybody ought to be treated right, that everybody should be equal under our laws, it was a tough decision. I'm new. So I had to say to the pastors and those who were against it for that reason, this is not the right thing to do. I had just walked out of my classroom in 2001 to work up here in this building. I didn't know how I could go back to my classroom and say, kids, I just worked on a bill that I agreed that it's okay to hate some people and commit crimes against them, but not other people. We do not have a hate crimes bill today, largely because I refused to take sexual orientation out of that bill. But I am proud I refused, because here we are, 20 years later, and I have faith that we're going to do this, that we're not going to do this as Democrats or Republicans, but as people. and that I hope everybody will see this effort as a hand out, not a fist where we are turning against each other. It's time, Arkansas. Hate has no place in the hearts of people who should be making the laws of the state. Thank you all who are here. I look forward to this bill passing in whatever time we take up this bill. But let's be proud enough and love our state enough to not keep breaking our own hearts by not having a hate crimes bill passed.
Stuck in my mask. Thank you, Senator Elliott. I am a mom of 2 children. I have 2 little girls at home, and as I was packing up my stuff yesterday, I asked them, just, what do y'all think makes a good law? My younger daughter said, a good law should keep everybody safe. And my older daughter was in the other room, and she called in, also, you have to treat everybody equal, right? They get it. Our kids get it. They understand that all Arkansans deserve to feel safe. All Arkansans deserve a government that says to them, no matter who you are or where you were born or what you look like or who you love, you are safe here. Hate crimes legislation is one of the things that I get asked about the most as a lawmaker, and I think that that's because, despite what they see in their daily lives, our Arkansas law is not sending the message to all of our residents that they are safe. In June, a 17-year-old transgender girl named Brayla Stone was found murdered not far from where we stand today. In the days after her death, remembrances poured in for her, and I remember one on Facebook by the Center for Artistic Revolution that said, Brayla was someone who always held space for others to be themselves and express their identities. That's it. Just like my 2 kids at home, Brayla was a child, but she was a child who was killed because others didn't show her the same understanding that she showed the world. This legislation is a reflection of that most basic truth that we all teach our kids, which is that we are all created equal. And I'm thrilled that this coalition has come together to show our kids that we mean that when we say it. This is not a partisan issue, as you can see today. This is Arkansas. Arkansans value freedom, the freedom to be who you are without being beaten up or killed because of it. Arkansans value justice. When people are targeted because of who they are, we're saying to them with this bill, we won't tolerate it. Right now is a time when a lot of us are grappling just to get back to normal. But Arkansas continues to find ways, like with this bill, to reach for even better together. Arkansans value freedom and we value justice. And I am grateful and honored to be a part of this team that's showing our state and our country that what we in Arkansas value most of all is one another. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Tippy McCullough, State Representative for District 33 here in Little Rock. I'm a member of a minority community that this hate crimes bill recognizes, the LGBTQ community. This bill enhances crimes, many that can escalate into extreme violence and death. A question I often get asked about a bill is there a need? Or in this case, are we seeing these things that happen that this bill would address? The answer is yes. In the last few years, we've had several Black, trans, female murders in Central Arkansas. The most recent one, Representative Clowney spoke about, happened just 2 months ago. Families, friends, and communities are shattered by these murders. We must put a human face on all who have been dehumanized and stigmatized. By passing this bill, Arkansas can send a message that we do not condone targeted violence against some of the most vulnerable in our society. Arkansas can speak for those who don't have a voice and say, you are not disposable if you don't have a home, if you are disabled, or your religion is different, or you look different, or love someone different.
You are valued. It's not okay or acceptable to prey on the disadvantaged or the unempowered. With a bipartisan effort, we have an opportunity to do what 47 other states in our nation have done. By passing a hate crimes bill, we can show that Arkansas cares about its people, all of its people. Thank you.
Good morning. I would tell you that when you have to go behind all these great representatives, there's not a lot left to say. But I will tell you this, Arkansas, we should not be last in this subject, and we're getting down to the point of being last. And we need to stand up and be first, and we need to protect every single member in our communities. And this is not a partisan issue. As you can see today, it is a bipartisan issue, and it should be. So with that, I would tell you that I have full support of supporting the hate crimes bill. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Governor Hutchinson, and all the sponsors for your leadership on this critical issue. I'm Randy Zook, CEO of the Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce, first non-legislator up here, and Associated Industries of Arkansas, and I'm here today because I believe that the time is right for comprehensive hate crimes legislation in Arkansas. The time has passed, really, but it's the right thing to do now. Why is that important, and why does it matter to Arkansas and Arkansas businesses represented on these two boards? And I must tell you, if we'd had a little more time, we could have papered the walls with logos of companies willing and anxious to support this legislation. Our largest and most successful companies and industries are having to import members of their workforce in many cases, attracting new people to Arkansas. We simply can no longer afford to turn people away or discourage them because they don't look, act, or worship the way we think they should. Arkansas needs to be open for business and growth, and that includes protecting the individuals who need it the most. As a representative of the business community, it's my pleasure to recommend this legislation. I believe it makes good business sense, just practical sense, and I hope we can count on our fellow Arkansans to do the right thing and support this good measure. Thank you.
Well, good morning. My name is Mark DeMaz, founding pastor of the Mosaic Church of Central Arkansas here in Little Rock. Again, it's an honor to be here with all of you for this important moment. And since I am a pastor and the closer of this event, I've written every word out so I can keep it to 1 minute. You'll be happy about that. On June 6th, a diverse group of some 70 lead pastors from Central Arkansas came together in a historic gathering to lead a virtual rally of Christians throughout the state, specifically denouncing anti-black hatred and violence, as well as racism and systemic injustice in all its forms. As part of that rally, a statement of solidarity was read and endorsed by the pastors, one which included support for the passing of hate crimes legislation in the state of Arkansas. The statement, as well as the names of the pastors signing off on it, is available on the web at mosaicchurch.net. The entire rally as well can be viewed there by clicking a link on the website. I've been told, and as Senator Elliott shared, that some 20 years ago, hate crime legislation was not able to gain traction in our state, due in part to the lack of clergy support. It's an honor then to be here today and to say that this time, Governor Hutchinson, in this moment, you do indeed have our support and our prayers for the passage of this bipartisan and significant piece of legislation as a deterrent to crimes motivated by hate, and more broadly, the message it sends about who we are as Arkansans and our determination to love our neighbors as ourselves and to respect the humanity of all people, not just some people, in the great state of Arkansas.
Thank you, Pastor, and I did want to recognize Dushan Scarborough with the Executive Director of the Martin Luther King Commission. Thank you for being here today, as well as the First Lady, who's also joined us today. And with that, we'll be happy to take any questions. Yes? Well, let's contrast it with what I was saying there. I think at that time, the question was as to whether we're going to protect all Arkansans regardless of their sexual orientation or other characteristics, and the decision was made, yes, we are. And so that is part of this bill, and that's what brought the breadth of support that is demonstrated here today. Is this unique? There might be some unique features in this as compared to other states, but it also has to go through the legislative process still. But these are the key elements that are necessary for something that is accepted as a significant hate crime legislation and will send the right message in Arkansas. I think it's education, that people understand it more. You know, the Attorney General of the United States, William Barr, came here to Arkansas and he was asked about hate crimes legislation, and he said, 20 years ago I opposed it, but now I support it, and we recognize how it is greatly needed. And so it is the confluence of events that we see from where we see it across the state, and some of these horrendous cases of going after citizens and misconduct, but you also see it through the education process. So I think that's what's changed, and that's what's brought us here today.
In that conversation that you had with the Attorney General and in this evolution, what do you have as ammunition to win those straggling hearts and minds that might be involved?
Well, it's everybody that's here today, from the faith community to Democrat legislators, to Republican legislators that are willing to stand up, to the business community, and to citizens just like Harrison that recognize this is important for protecting individuals, but it's also important for demonstrating that Arkansas is a place that you can live and be safe, and that we're not going to tolerate hatred like that kind that leads to violence. So I think all of that together is going to bring the votes in. And I would invite, if there's anybody else that wants to make a comment, you just come up right after me.
If I recall, the draft of this legislation that was presented earlier this summer included a reporting requirement for local law enforcement agencies. We've seen some law enforcement agencies this year push back on some of the things that people in this building have done with the mask mandate. Do you expect any pushback from law enforcement on if they're going to have any requirements under this bill?
I mean, nobody likes paperwork and keeping data, but it is important in this instance, and so the legislation does provide that data will be collected, and that the Attorney General has a role to collect that data, and then to make a report to the General Assembly and to the Governor each year. It helps us to be transparent, to have awareness as to how this law would be used. Senator Hendren, do you have any comments that you want to make just on some of the details there?
Well, I'll just add, if there is any benefit to being 48th in something, it is you've got the opportunity to look at what 47 other states have done. So we're not exactly blazing new trails here. We've learned from the legislation that has been passed in Utah and Georgia, Republican states, just recently. And I think this is solid legislation, it's proven legislation, and it's legislation that will stand court scrutiny. Again, I see no issues with the makeup of the legislation, because it's so easy to learn from the experiences of others.
Anything else? With that, thank everybody for being here today to support this. And I know the session is some time away, but let me tell you, it comes quickly. And so let's be ready and let's spread the voice and the importance of this. Thank you.